It's going to take a few minutes to let everybody start showing up for this tonight. Really, this is going to be good. Thank you. Hello, Kennedy. Hello, Anna. Who else is here? Hello, Alice. Hello, Tracy. Hello, everybody showing up here tonight. This is pretty special. So thank you for being here. Can everybody hear me clearly? Are you comfortable? Are you comfortable? Are you calm? You can feel good in your life. So thank you everybody for being patient. Thank you for showing up here tonight. Thank you for being exactly who you are and doing exactly what you did today. Because you did a good job. So thank you for that. Man, technology, right? To those who came before us, thank you. Because we did, we are. And to those who will come after, thank you. Because we do, you will. May divine wisdom inspire each of us in this moment. And for this, I am receptive and grateful. So, thank you for showing up to the most interesting recording of the Sowing Fire podcast tonight. How can I say that? How can I say it with so much authority and conviction that you've shown up to the most interesting one? Well, because you've actually shown up to the first one. So thank you for being here on our premiere episode. I hope that this will be helpful for you. I hope that you find some connection. You know, the TEC calls, the Thursday evening calls, we were ready to go deeper. We were ready to grow. And so in this, you know, we started to put in this podcast, and I decided to call this podcast Sowing Fire. And not sewing like a needle and thread, but sowing where you are literally throwing seeds. I've been talking about seed throwing for a couple of years now, and every single one of us has the ability and the gift of throwing seeds to ourselves, throwing seeds for other people, throwing seeds to grow things in our lives. So just thank you for showing up here. Thank you for whatever reason, being here in this episode with me tonight. So the first premiere episode of Sowing Fire, you're showing up, I'm showing up, grateful for it. Whew. So can I just encourage everybody, wherever you're sitting or whatever you're doing right now, can I just encourage you to take a few deep breaths and just think about your day. Think about what happened in this day. Think about how you feel in this moment. Think about, how you decided to react or respond. Think about who you were in this day. Think about what you've learned from this day. Think about, or even think, who showed up to be your teachers and your catalysts in this day. These things are important. This is how self-realization or conscious creating or manifesting at will, this is how it works, is just by getting very present and being very mindful. And that can be super helpful with a group of people, like-minded people. So just a few deep breaths. Make sure that when you're breathing, it's your belly that's expanding and not your chest. So a few deep breaths. Another one. And let's just venture down this rabbit hole and let's see some things and let some things come up, because you're safe here. I'm safe here. And so whatever shows up for you, whatever is revealed, it's because you're ready for it. You're ready to handle it differently. You're ready to respond to it rather than react. So just think about some things and no worries. Like I said, you're safe. It's good. And let's spend the next 20 minutes, half hour or so, and just go explore some really beautiful rabbit holes. So I guess it's appropriate for me to introduce myself. My name's Tia. I'm a shamanic practitioner. I help people heal themselves from their own diseases, sicknesses, and illnesses. I'm a teacher, I'm a writer, sometimes even a mystic. It's important for us to know who we are, right? So I also take magical groups of people to magical places around the world. I incite transformation. And after 19 years of doing this, I've become pretty good at it, I would like to think. So, thanks for showing up here, and thanks for whatever animal medicine you're walking with. Thanks for letting it walk with the jaguar that I walk with. And beyond anything that I can name myself as being, I'm also love, the same as you. It's the essence of all of us. It's where we come from, our original seeds. We all came from love. Even her, and even him, and even them over there. We've all come from love. You will hear me say that 1,000 times in my life. So this episode is all about definition, how we define ourselves, what positions we play, what roles we step into in this life. And there goes some notices. The definition of define says this: it's the state or to describe exactly the nature, the scope, or the meaning of something. How do we define ourselves? If you want to participate in something right now, just a quick exercise in self-awareness, then close your eyes. I can only encourage you. And take a few more deep breaths. And let's take a moment to take a look at how we've been defining ourselves. How do you define yourself? Do you define yourself by the tags that are on the clothes that you wear? Do you define yourself by the color of the bottom of your shoes? Do you define yourself by the initials that come behind your name because you were academically successful? Does your job define you? Does your role as parent, brother, daughter, do you define yourself by the roles in your family? Do you define yourself by your possessions? Do you define yourself by what you've been through? Criminal, victim, victor, survivor, thriver? And none of this is bad. It's just a lesson in self-awareness. Nobody here has the intention to make anybody else feel bad. It's just simply, what's your answer? How do you define yourself? Do you define yourself by your sports teams? Do you define yourself by your political associations? Do you define yourself by the people that you hang out with on the weekends or you go riding your motorcycle with? How do you define yourself? Do you define yourself by your culture? Do you define yourself by your family or your family's reputations or even your family's conditions? And so as we're talking and you're thinking about these things, Then let's even move on beyond how you've defined yourself. I mean, do you define yourself by really beautiful adjectives? Are you a passionate person? Are you a patient person? Are you a compassionate person? Are you tolerant? Are you peaceful? Are you edgy? Are you powerful? Are you active? Are you inactive? Are you more than enough? Or are you just not good enough? Now, this is all your choice. This is all you're choosing. How you define yourself is also, you can interchange that with how do you perceive yourself? How do you look at you when it's just you and your reflection in the mirror? How do you speak to yourself when it's just you and your reflection in the mirror? And so I'm asking, how do we define ourselves? How do we create this for ourselves and make these connections? And so in the same breath, how do you define other people? Ooh. These podcasts are going to be a little different because I get to look out there, you get to see me, and one way or another, we're going to figure out how to make this way more interactive. Does anybody have any questions? Are we all on the same page with this? How do you define yourself? How are you defining other people? A class of people, a race of people, a certain political affiliation? How have you been defining? How have you been defining your experiences? How do you define your memories? How do you classify them? How do you perceive them? This is all very powerful when you sit down and you start answering the questions. Because what happens is it then brings you to a greater self-awareness about you. It's pretty great. We're creatures of habit. We fall into cycles pretty easy. And so the way that we work our ways out of those cycles is by getting to know ourselves. And the way that we get to know ourselves is the same way that we get to know most everything in life. We ask questions. And so here's your question about how you define yourself. How do you perceive your story? How do you look at you? How do you talk to you? The things that you hold against yourself, the things when you're speaking unkindly to yourself, those things, would you hold your best friend in the same light as the things that you hold yourself in? Would you hold your mother in the things that you hold yourself in? And when I mean things that you hold, things where you're feeling emotions like doubt, shame, guilt, worry, not being gentle with you. And so in this choice of how we choose to define ourselves, that's powerful because that's your choice. You get to choose to see yourself as weak, humble, can't get off your back, can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps, not good enough, way more than, over the top, too much, overwhelming, intense, beautiful. Can you say that right now? Like, can you look at yourself right now? And can you tell yourself, I'm beautiful? Not me. I feel good with how I feel about myself, but you personally. Can you look at yourself? Can you tell yourself in the mirror, hey, I'm beautiful? Can you do that? These are the ways that you get to learn about who you are as a person and the choices that you've been making and how you've chosen to perceive in life. It's pretty great. So now that we've taken this opportunity to see ourselves, wait, are we all on the same page? Are we good? Just give me 1 second. Let me read these things real quick. Melissa Karen, you define yourself as an alien. Of course you do. And you're also a time traveler. And you're also in healing work. And you're also super powerful. And you're also a great travel companion to Peru. Let's see, Cindy. Defining myself and others can change daily and depending on the situation and moods, right? Absolutely. In every moment. You don't even have to wait for a full 24-hour period. You can literally define in any moment. And whereas maybe, have you ever made a definition about somebody? Maybe you're at a party or maybe you're at a business function, which can sometimes be parties. and someone walks in the room and this person has a reputation. And when they walk in and you recognize who that person is, you're automatically creating the story about this person. Well, then, you know, the synchronicity of the universe, you and this person start to have a conversation. And you start to see that maybe this person's reputation, maybe they've outgrown this reputation. Maybe this is not a side that that person is putting out in this aspect of their world. However it is, you start having this conversation with this person who at one time, maybe previous minutes before, you were already judging based on the reputation that you heard about them. And so you get your mind changed. Now I know you, Cindy, and you're a Leo moon. So, you know, the way that we change our minds is by we change our hearts about something. We change our perceptions and how we see it. All of a sudden, that person that's, you know, in the next office cubicle next to yours, that's always so cranky and always so negative and just, you know, maybe you've described them as foul. When you start to understand and you start to have a conversation with that person, you start to reach certain understanding. And what happens through understanding is then you start to see a little deeper in maybe what other people had read or translated about that person. And so then all of a sudden that, oh my gosh, that's so negative person and can suck the air out of the room. All of a sudden you stop seeing that person in those judgments and you start seeing them in their fears. Because that's what happens when people act out of alignment to their hearts is they just got scared. When people, you know, are biting and seething or growling or rattling or, you know, puffing up and trying to look scary, really what you're noticing is their own fears. And that's a powerful thing to notice because then you've stopped taking their actions personally against you. Instead of them, you know, being this negative Nancy or Debbie Downer or all these crazy names we have associated with other adjectives of definition, what happens is you start to gain a little more compassion. What happens is you start to grow in your lessons, and that can only be a beautiful thing. Let's see, what else do we have here? Lily, are you automatically muted? No, you're, we're on Facebook Live right now. I'm not the person to tell you about technological things, but basically, because we're doing this on Facebook Live on this episode, you can't really talk. So it's more like you just tap it out. So if you have a question or anything that you want to share, just put it into the chat, into the thread on this live, and we'll make sure to get to you. So why do we define ourselves? What happens? Why does anybody want to define themselves? We define ourselves because of comparison. When we don't know who we are, when we don't feel strong in ourselves, we look at other people around us. That can also be defined as competition or perceived as competition. And so what happens is we start to define ourselves in comparison to others. For example, have you ever watched one of those die-hard football fans? Their team has lost the game. Have you ever watched some of their reactions? Doesn't make it good or bad, just good example. That is a comparison. The reason that we make definitions, the reason that we define ourselves or seek to define ourselves through whatever aspects and channels we perceive is because we find value in our definitions. You know how some people will seek to put down other people in life, and then we look at them and we'll say something like, oh, you know, they're just putting her down or putting down that group of people or putting down him because to make themselves feel better. Do you ever think that those people actually feel better? I don't. I have lots of conversations with those people on a weekly basis. So what's really happening is they're attempting, but they're not creating a success in it because what they're doing is out of alignment to their hearts. And so instead what happens is well, they create hurt, they create a discomfort, they can create pain, which then creates a whole bunch of catalyzations. It creates a whole bunch of opportunities. The person that they're speaking to, That person can take their words as valid or irrelevant. The person who's speaking those words, they can either choose to create a more pressurized situation until eventually love shines through. So if you've seen that before, just understand it's okay. I'm not saying for anybody to be anybody's doormat. All I'm saying is that when people act out of alignment to their hearts, what's happening is it's not really about you. They're not really coming after you. They're afraid. And so right now in that moment, that interaction, they're reminding you about your own fears. They're giving you an opportunity to edit and check your own fear acting in the ways that you can perceive them as being. So just understand that we define ourselves to confirm or add value to the perceptions that we write about ourselves, our stories, the steps that we've taken, the addictions that we've been through, whatever paths it is that we've walked or we're continuing to walk. So understand that when people are defining themselves, what they're doing is they're seeking value. They're seeking confirmation of their value. Does anybody have any questions on that? So why do we do that? Why do we define ourselves that, which then helps us to perceive value about ourselves or another person or something around us? Well, what happens is your actions in this life are based on how you value yourself. Let me say that again because we've got about 8 minutes. Your actions in this life are based upon how you value yourself. A person who's caught up in the human condition of not good enough doesn't hold themselves in a lot of value, doesn't feel themselves, doesn't deem themselves to be worthy. And so what happens is they'll continue in their enough discomfort and enough pain and enough hurt that eventually it will catalyze them. It'll be painful enough that they'll finally say, all right, you know what? That's where we get the let go and let God, right? We get to that point where we finally just can't resist it any longer. We can't resist choosing love any longer. We can't resist going against our fears any longer because we already know what happens when we take those paths and make those decisions from our fear. So your actions in this life are based upon how you value yourself, self-worth, which then also shows your words, your actions, your belief systems will also all reveal the value that you give to yourself. Are you one of those super givers? Like, do you always say yes to people? Do you always bend over backwards? And then you get on Facebook and you write about how upset you are that nobody shows up for you and you show up for everybody? Okay, well, it's not right or wrong, at least not here. But what's really happening is you are creating enough discomfort and enough pressurization in your world that you will finally not just give, and give, but you will start to create healthy boundaries for yourself. And you'll also start to learn how to receive. If you just give, if you're just a giver, and you're not receptive to equal amounts of energy that you're giving out, then what's happening is you are imbalanced. You're a little askew. Nothing wrong with it. But if you want balance, if you want flow, then there's some things that you can kind of, tweak and take care of some details. So as you work on your value, your worthiness, what happens is in turn, this comes out in your vibration and your transmission that you emit. Your vibes. What kind of vibes are you walking with? What kind of vibes are you working with these days? What was your vibration today? What was your transmission out into this reality? When people pick up on your vibes, when people say, hey, are you okay? You say, well, how did you know? Oh, I could pick up on your vibes. I could feel your vibes. Or, I'm an empath. I can feel it. Whatever it is, what's showing up is a reflection along your journey. You'll hear me say this a lot. This world, your life, This journey is one 360-degree reflection of you. And you're the one that's seeing it. You're the one that's looking at different aspects in your life, your relationships, your career, whatever, your memories, your trauma. You're the one that's looking at these things and calling them whatever you're calling them. And what you're calling them, the definition, right? What you're calling them, what you're naming them, is going to be based on how you value yourself. Now that you know this, you can't unknow it. Now that you see a thing, you can't unsee it. So the best advice I feel I can give you is to just gently encourage you to start paying more attention. Start paying more attention to your reactions in this life. Start paying more attention to your perceptions that you choose about you. Start paying more attention to how you judge things, how you define things, how you define other people. Start paying attention to your reactions and or responses to anything that shows up. A thought, a memory, a reminder, someone taking a certain action specifically in your life. Well, hello, Fortuna. Fortuna says, hey. So paying attention to that, paying attention to how you choose to respond to the reflections that you see in the mirror called your journey and your life. Does anybody have any questions? Let's see. Nice. Good job, Tara Aries. Rebecca, thanks for being here. You know, your journey, being able to create, has to do with you being self-aware, getting into alignment with things, but first and foremost, valuing yourself. There's a reason why I wanted this very first episode to be one on defining and definition, how you look at you, because that's basically the first step when you decide that you want to make some serious transformation in your life. That's the first thing that's got to happen before you can even put your intention out there, is you have to realize that you're worthy, you're worth it to make the change, and you deserve to hold yourself in value. One of the things that I have some of my clients do is getting them to sit in front of a mirror and just, give yourself an affirmative mantra. One that we've used here for a really long time is, I'm love, I'm priceless, I'm fearless, and I'm beautiful. All is happening in perfection, and I choose love. I'm love, I'm priceless, I'm fearless, I'm beautiful. All is happening in perfection, and I choose love. I am love, I'm priceless, I'm fearless, I'm beautiful. All is happening in perfection, and I choose love. Who's got questions? Kathy, let me see this one again. Valiant, let's see. What about really painful things? Some things hurt no matter how you get it. Yeah, they do. And knowing a small part of your story and seeing what I see, I understand what you're speaking of. Here's the thing that my teacher, Patrick Collard, taught me a while ago. He used to say, it's okay to feel pain. It's okay to go into it. Pain reminds us that we're still alive. And pain also, in that reminder, gives us the opportunity to make different choices in our life. When we go through something painful, it's not because we're being punished. It's not because we're a bad person. It's not because, we are deserving to feel this hurt. Pain, prolonged, can lead to suffering. Suffering is probably, in my professional opinion, one of our greatest teachers in this life. And I think that the perception of suffering has become extremely skewed for people. I feel like we have suffering ingrained in our emotional opportunities, our emotional choices that we decide on. Your emotions come based on how you perceive something. So when something's painful, somebody like me would tell you, that's exactly where you know you need to jump in. The painful thing has got something to reveal to you. There's a treasure in that painful thing. There's a treasure in that suffering. Not saying to endure the suffering, please don't get that twisted. But the treasure is in having the ability to muster your courage. Even if you feel afraid, you can still take courageous acts and be afraid. You can do that. I'm not sure if somebody needs to hear that, but I feel very inclined to tell you, you can be afraid, but still take courageous actions. You just got to make the choice. And so when something is so incredibly painful, and we write all these stories about how painful it possibly is, and if we went deeper into it, then it's going to mean that much more pain for us. The reason that it's painful is because it holds a treasure. If I said, Kathy, on this island, on this specific spot in the Atlantic Ocean, there's a treasure waiting for you. And I gave you a shovel and I gave you a boat. Would you head that way? Would you go check it out? And when you got to that place, and maybe I told you, hey, on this island, I need you to look for 2 palm trees that have grown in an X. And in between that X marks the spot. That's where your treasure is. You start digging, right? Digging can get painful. You got to dig deep, right? You got to dig deep to find the treasures. Digging can be painful. But will that pain in your back and your arms and your shoulders, and will this pain that you perceive in your heart, is it worth it to see what that treasure is? Is it worth it to go deeper? Is it worth it to look at yourself? Is it worth it to grow? Is it worth it to realize your power? Is it worth it to find your strength, to find your faith, to reignite your hope? Yes. Yes, it is. Hello. Hello, Lily's brother. Thanks for showing up. I want to continue doing this. I want this to grow. Chris Stoner, Tia, would you say that pain is our roadmap to health and healing? It absolutely can be. But even beyond pain, I would say that suffering, that suffering, the thing that we go through when we experience something painful, when we write the perceptions of that pain. Now, loss can be painful. Feeling like we failed can be painful. But at the end of the day, we can choose to allow that pain, that suffering to be our brake, or we can choose to allow it to be our gas pedal. Paulo Coelho, the author of The Alchemist, which is a book that I highly recommend to anybody showing up who wants to do transformative work. Paulo Coelho says, let fear be your gas pedal and not your brake. I feel the same way about pain and suffering. Go into it. Because if you're on this tonight and we're having this conversation and I'm saying, hey, I really feel like this is what I've seen in my own experiences and this is what I've seen working with other people, I encourage you to go into it, to go deeper. If anybody wants to go deeper, my services are available. If you want some good links or just a little help, these podcasts are going to start coming out weekly. How we'll do it in the beginning is, we'll record it some, we'll do some lives, but also we'll put it out on the Facebook page, on the Sowing Fire Podcast Tribe Group Facebook page. We'll also put it up on YouTube. This will also go up on Spotify, iTunes, all those good things that you listen to your favorite podcasts on. We're growing. And so thank you for choosing to grow with me and in doing this here together. We've got good things to do in this life. And, we've all got purposes to tap into. We've all got steps to take. We've all got crossroads to find ourselves at. We've all got decisions. And so I just hope that tonight, if you showed up here, it helped you out, it did something. And if it did, then Tell your friends, because this is just going to keep growing. I'm a Leo moon. And if I decide that something's going to grow, whew, I'm putting it out there. You guys have a beautiful night, a beautiful day if you're listening to this recording. And just remember, the key to self-mastery is by asking yourself the questions and answering them honestly. That's how all of this works. So have a wonderful night, a wonderful day, a beautiful week. I will be here next week, and I hope you will be as well. Y'all take care. Hosho banana, hosho nahasli, which in Dene, which in the language of the Navajo means, may everything walk in beauty. May all be in harmony. Y'all take care. What a beautiful first episode. We'll see ya. Bye, y'all. Let me find this.